The 2024 Giro d'Italia was another chapter in the incredible history of the beautiful race, this time with Tadej Pogacar taking the top honours, and in today's video we're going to break down exactly how the legend of the sport took the Grand Tour win. Tadej Pogacar and the Giro d'Italia was a highly anticipated scenario for cycling fans in 2023 when it was announced by the organisers, as he is the most electric rider of his generation and was chasing more historic achievements, and the 2024 Giro Tour double was certainly something on his cards as well. The UAE Team Emirates team seemed capable but was missing that venom that we've been used to from the team. Maybe this was due to the perceived lack of rivals within the race. Pogacar had an incredible start to the year, winning Strade Bianche and podium Milan-San Remo and even dominating the Vuelta a Catalunya, so his spirits was high coming into the race. Pogacar faced a challenging start to his Giro d'Italia career with an opening 140km stage which featured a tough finale with a 1.4km climb at 9.8%, the San Vito climb, just 3 kilometers from the finish. The race saw early breaks with UAE Team Emirates keeping gaps manageable, and the decisive moment came on the Col Maddalena climb where Pogacar's team was reduced to just Rafa Majka supporting him. Several riders broke away, forcing Pogacar to wait for the final climb to make his move. On that San Vito climb, Pogacar launched a fierce attack, breaking the group apart. Only Jonathan Narvaez and Maximilian Schachmann could stay with him. Despite Pogacar's efforts, Narvaez managed to outsprint him at the finish, taking a win for the Ecuadorian, and Pogacar was so close. Pogacar, though disappointed and so close to a debut win like Mathieu van der Poel had done in 2022, he had still gained valuable seconds on his GC rivals, setting the stage for further battles on the upcoming climbs. Stage 2, starting in San Francisco El Campo Velodrome, was a 161km stage that finished up the Europa, awarding the Montagna Pantani prize as well. Pogacar was seeking revenge after stage 1 and faced a crucial test on his mountaintop finish. Early in the stage, the peloton led by Ineos Grenadiers in UAE maintained a controlled pace, and with 4.5 kilometers to go heading into the final climb, Pogacar, out of the blue, crashed due to a front puncture he had sustained, but quickly got back on his bike and managed with the additional adrenaline to make his way up to his rivals once more. The crash and the comeback evoked memories of Marco Pantani's legendary 1999 win at Europa, and despite this setback, like Pantani, Pogacar, supported by his team, rejoined the peloton and launched a fierce attack with 4 kilometers to go. Pogacar's acceleration dropped all his rivals, including Geraint Thomas and Ben O'Connor, who tried to hang on. He maintained a strong lead, ultimately winning the stage and claiming the Maglia Rosa. This victory marked Pogacar's first Giro d'Italia stage win and demonstrated his claim for the overall title. Stage 3 was a sprinter-friendly stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia, covering Novara to Fossano, including only one significant climb, the Cap 4 climb at Lou after 59 kilometers, and 2 small unclassified hills near the end. The stage began quietly with no significant breakaway until Lilian Camajan and David Ballerini made a move around the 50km mark. However, it was Jonathan Milan who dominated the early intermediate sprint as the peloton approached the final intermediate sprint. However, Pogacar attacked to extend his overall lead with the bonus seconds. He gained 2, while his rival Geraint Thomas took 1 second. In the final kilometer of the stage, a brief attack on a late unclassified climb saw Pogacar and Thomas break away from the pack, and for a moment it looked like the duo would be competing for the victory. But the sprinters team reeled them in slowly, and Tim Merlier managed to win the sprint, with Pogacar maintaining his GC lead and staying in the prime position for the upcoming stages. And here is what Geraint Thomas thought of the move.
And then Paul go, and I was like, oh, might as well just go. But jeepers, man, it was solid. He's kicking my head in.
On stage 4, there was little GC action during the day, with Pogacar and his rivals focusing on staying safe in the finale. However, Ben O'Connor faced issues after crashing on a wet descent. The only change in the top 5 was Kian Uiterbroek, who moved from 5th to 4th past Aina Rubio by gaining a bonus second at the intermediate sprint. Stage 5 was another flat finish, but this time with a surprise winner, Benjamin Thomas, who won from the break. Stage 6 was the novelty stage, the gravel stage, the Strade Bianche day of the Giro d'Italia, which saw a fierce battle for the breakaway. All eyes were on Tadej Pogacar as he was the defending Strade Bianche champion. However, he was more focused on maintaining his Maglia Rosa lead and let others take the initiative. Numerous attacks occurred. A large group, including Luke Plapp, eventually broke away. Plapp was perceived as a contender for the Maglia Rosa, virtually gaining time bonuses at the intermediate sprints. However, UAE and Ineos kept the breakaway in check. As the race progressed through the gravel sectors, the gap narrowed, and despite Plapp's effort, the peloton led by Ineos closed in. In the final kilometers, the breakaway riders of Sanchez and Alaphilippe attacked, with Peleo Sanchez winning the stage, and Pogacar followed the moves and stayed safe, preserving his overall lead. Stage 7 was the first time trial stage of the Giro, and it was Filippo Ganna who spent most of the day in the hot seat with his teammate Magnus Sheffield very close as well, with a great time, only 49 seconds behind the Italian. Tiberi clocked a good, and despite fading in the final climb, Geraint Thomas held on to third place overall. Tadej Pogacar was not far off Ganna's time in the intermediate time checks, but after the hill it became apparent to Ganna and the world that Pogacar was on a hot day, rocketing up the Cat 4 climb at the end of the 40.6 kilometer course to snatch the stage victory. Pogacar, with this victory, even managed to extend his lead in the general classification even more. Stage 8 was another mountain stage which featured over 3,500 meters of elevation and finished with the summit of the Pranto di Tivo. The day began with intense attacks as riders vied for the breakaway, but UAE kept things under control. An initial breakaway struggle to form, with Alaphilippe and Steinhauser among the most active. Eventually, a group of 14, including Pogacar's rival, gained a modest 2-minute lead. Pogacar looked slightly isolated at times, but his teammates Rafa Majka and Doman Novak provided crucial support on the climbs. As the race progressed, the breakaway's cooperation faltered, and the peloton, led by UAE, closed the gap. Intense pace set by his team decimated the peloton completely. Tiberi tried to attack in the final kilometers, but Pogacar stayed close, responding to each move, with Majka, his ever-loyal lieutenant, providing a strong lead out after having faded and coming back. Pogacar launched his sprint against the seemingly frightened rivals and crossed the finishing line, celebrating, solidifying his lead even more. Stage 9 was the second longest stage of the race and began in Avenzo with a breakaway featuring 2 Polti-Cometa riders. The race livened up at the intermediate sprint, where Tim Merlier took maximum points despite earlier injuries. The real action started in the final 40 kilometers around Napoli, where Alpecin de Koenig and the GC teams pushed the pace. Alaphilippe launched a solo attack with 27 kilometers to go, but Narvaez eventually overtook him on the final climb. However, UAE, with Pogacar committed to the chase, closed the gap. This effort proved crucial as Milan and Coyle launched their final sprint, catching Narvaez, and just meters before the finish, the victory was denied. Pogacar's team once again demonstrated their strength and resilience in controlling the race. Stage 10 was a 142 kilometer stage with a mountaintop finish on the Bocca della Selva climb. The stage began with high speeds as the riders attempted to form breakaways. UAE determined to control the peloton, but a significant breakaway of 24 riders eventually formed. Pogacar and his team allowed the break to go, focusing on maintaining their position in the peloton. Tratnik launched a solo attack afterwards and was chased down by Bardet, Bajoli and Valentin Panapantra. Panapantra was the one who eventually got the better of the rest and ended up winning the stage. In the GC group, Bahrain, Victorious and Bora set a high pace, with Pogacar sitting comfortably. Despite a last-ditch sharp acceleration by Ben O'Connor, Pogacar finished with the main group of contenders, gaining seconds over some rivals and further solidifying his hold on the Maglia Rosa and maintaining control of the race. Stage 11 was another flat affair that spanned 207 kilometers in total. The stage began with a 3-rider breakaway featuring Thomas Champion, Edoardo Affini and Tim van Dijke. The breakaway was reeled in with 35.3 kilometers to go, prompting a fight for positioning among the GC teams and the sprint teams. An attack by Andrea Piccolo woke up the peloton, and a crash involving Felix Großschartner briefly disrupted the race. As the peloton approached the tricky stage finish, Ineos Grenadiers protected Geraint Thomas while Jaco Alula led out too early. In the final sprint, a crash involving Matthias Michels, Fabio Jakobsen and friend of the channel Tobias Lund Andreasen marred the finish, but Pogacar and the other GC riders finished safely. Stage 12 was a 193 kilometer race through the walls of the marsh region. The first 50 kilometers saw record speed with 57 kilometers an hour average as the teams tried to establish an early breakaway. GC contenders, including Pogacar, finished safely, conserving energy for the upcoming tests. Stage 13 was the flattest stage of the 2024 Giro d'Italia, starting as expected with a breakaway, and a trio formed which quickly gained 3 minutes and led before the sprint teams controlled the pace. The calm race turned intense 62 kilometers from the finish when Ineos Grenadiers ignited a crosswind battle, creating echelons and splitting the group. This caught out Lidl-Trek's Jonathan Milan, but he managed to rejoin the front group after a hard chase, and Pogacar in all this was sitting very comfortable in the front group. A crash involving Filippo Zana highlighted the nerves in the peloton, and in the final kilometers, Jaco Ayula and Lidl-Trek led the charge, with Milan ultimately winning the sprint finish. Stage 14, the second time trial of the race, of a more flat nature. Early in the race, Joseph Tony set a benchmark which was soon beaten by Max Walscheid and then even Edoardo Affini, who took the lead, only to be surpassed by Filippo Ganna, who clocked a blistering 35 minutes and 2 seconds. As the GC contenders started, Arensman made a strong showing, eventually finishing second with 36 minutes and 9 seconds. Thomas performed well as well, moving into second place overall by finishing ahead of Dani Martinez. And Pogacar, the final rider, clocked the fastest time as the first intermediate check, but ultimately finished 29 seconds behind a relieved Filippo Ganna. The stage reshuffled the standings in the GC once again, with Thomas moving up into second place. Stage 15 was another mountain stage test at 222 kilometers long stage featuring 3 first category climbs and the fearsome Passo del Mortirolo. This was the Queen stage with 5,400 meters of elevation, which was pivotal in the GC battle. The UAE-led peloton kept the break in check, with the gap narrowing to 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The race intensified over the final climbs, with Steinhauser making a solo move before being caught by Nairo Quintana, and Pogacar, running out of teammates, launched a decisive attack 14 kilometers from the finish, quickly gaining minutes on the riders in front of him, and Pogacar overtook the 2014 Giro d'Italia champion on the final climb and secured another stage win, extending his lead significantly, as behind Daniel Martinez and Geraint Thomas finished together while Ben O'Connor and others struggled, and now his lead was 6 minutes and 41 seconds. Stage 16 was one to forget for the organizers, as the stage was shortened for a second time due to the weather conditions, removing the climb of the Omral Pass, which had already been the big attraction since the Stelvio was removed, and this also reduced the stage to 121 kilometers. The stage began firstly under a petrol station for the riders on the wet roads, and there were early breakaway attempts, but it was Alaphilippe who led the charge. As the race progressed, Alaphilippe maintained the lead, but UAE, leading the peloton, gradually closed the gap. Peleo Sanchez and Movistar did Movistar things, and other chasers attempted to bridge the gap, but Alaphilippe was eventually caught on the final climb, and then the race opened up. On the steep final ascent, Pogacar, almost reluctantly in his overalls, launched a decisive move, leaving his GC rivals painted to the tarmac. He He caught and passed the remaining breakaway riders, securing another win and solidifying his lead overall. Behind him, Pellizzari finished second and Dani Martinez in third place, gaining valuable bonus seconds on Geraint Thomas. Pogacar almost felt sorry for the young Italian and desperately wanted him to take the stage win, but instead gave him the Maglia Rosa on his shoulders at the end of the stage as mark of respect. Stage 17 covered 159 kilometers through the Dolomites with 5 major climbs. The stage included the new Cima Coppi, the 2,244 meter Passo Sella. The battle for the breakaway began immediately with numerous attacks on the Passo Sella, and from the break it was Pellizzari who took the Cima Coppi prize, and the decisive moments came on the Passo Broncon. Steinhauser made a solid move, maintaining a significant gap, and on the final climb, Pogacar attacked the GC contenders. He accelerated hard, gaining a small gap, but Steinhauser held on to the stage win, with Pogacar finishing 18 seconds behind the German. Stage 18 was a let-up after 2 tough Alpine stages, and it was ultimately Tim Merlier who won the stage in a dramatic sprint finish. Behind him, Pogacar finished safely within the peloton, preserving the overall lead. Stage 19 became a very quiet day for Pogacar, as this was a breakaway day which saw Andrea Vadrame take the win. Meanwhile, in the Maglia Rosa group, there was a bit of drama as Dani Martinez and Geraint Thomas held tight until Thomas crashed with 6 kilometers to go. The group, however, eased up, allowing Thomas to rejoin, and there was no change to Pogacar's lead. Stage 20 was a very rain-soaked stage in the beginning, with the riders facing 2 climbs of the daunting Monte Grappa with its 18-kilometer length, but Tadej Pogacar was the stage focal point, and early on a duo that included David Bellerini briefly led before they became of a 9-man group, and this breakaway worked well and gained a lead of 4 minutes. In the main peloton, the main incident was Pogacar who visited the doctor's car for an arm pain, and as the race hit the ascent of the Monte Grappa, the breakaway fragmented and was joined by Giulio Pellizzari, who took the KOM points on the first ascent of the climb. Pellizzari and Peleo Sanchez, later joined by Forelli, led into the second ascent of the Monte Grappa with a 2 minute and 40 second lead. The young Pellizzari eventually pulled away, but the peloton, guided by UAE Team Emirates, began to close the gap. With 5.4 kilometers to go, Pogacar launched a decisive attack, leaving the GC rivals behind, and he quickly caught and then surpassed Pellizzari on the climb, ultimately riding solo to secure a historic Maglia Rosa. The final stage saw the results sealed in the history books, as Tadej Pogacar became the second Slovenian to win the Giro Tour, his 3rd Grand Tour victory to his career, winning on debut on the Giro Tour. Anyways, with that, that's basically it for this video. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel here on The Cycling Dane, and if you haven't already, comment down below what you thought of Tadej Pogacar's impressive Giro Tour victory.